Hello everyone, welcome to The Insider on Laterra TV. I'm Caroline Hill, Editor-in-Chief of Legal IT Insider, and I have the pleasure today of being joined by two of the best connected ladies in the sector.
Really?
Helen Burness and Heath, who I'll come on to introduce properly in a second. We are talking today about two really important connected topics. One, which is the impact that COVID-19 is having on women's careers, and we'll be exchanging some ideas on some positive stories. Hopefully we're going to try not to all cry into our tea over this session. We're going to try to exchange some positive stories as well, and perhaps some tips if you've got employers listening in, perhaps things that we're seeing that are working well. We're going to try and make it as positive as possible. And we're also talking about the connected topic of mental health, which is not gender specific. We're going to be talking about the impact of COVID on mental health in the round, but obviously there is a connection between the two. If I can introduce Joy. Hi, Joy.
Hey, Caroline, it's always great to see you.
Thank you so much for joining us. So Joy doesn't need much of an introduction. Joy's CEO of ILTA, which, as we all know, is the industry association for educating us on legal technology and run by volunteers and staff such as Joy. So Joy, just very quickly, I was looking for inspiration in introducing you. So I went to the ILTA website and it tells me that you're married to a retired firefighter, aka best guy in the world,
Yeah.
3 wonderful kids, a geriatric dog and 2 rotten cats.
Yes,
Rotten cats.
exactly. And I just have to say, my oldest daughter turns 35 today. So let me call out to her, Sarah, and which is a pretty impossible since I myself am only 35. So I haven't quite figured that out, but nonetheless, I will celebrate her today.
That's that's great, Tommy. So happy birthday to her. I could go on. I mean, so I think everybody knows you. So you were at Laterra before starting at ILTA. So it's a kind of homecoming for you. And before that, you were at Sidley. And at ILTA, you're doing a great job of, I think I described it as leading with gusto and empathy, which is the way that I see it. Helen, it's lovely to see you.
Hello.
So Helen, you're Director of Saltmarsh Marketing and CMO of She Breaks the Law. So She Breaks the Law is a network of women leaders across the globe. I was trying to find out the latest number. I said over 2,000 here, but is that what's? Do you have any idea of what's the number? You're well over 2,000.
Well over 2,000 lawbreakers now in over 50 countries. So yeah, you know, phenomenal growth since we launched on International Women's Day in 2019. So there's a lot of lawbreakers out there.
I love the term lawbreakers as well. I quite want to be a lawbreaker.
You are a lawbreaker.
Am I? I actually am part of the group. It's a social media led group, isn't it? So you're very much sort of social media based and sharing experiences on social media.
Yeah, we're at the moment, that's the sort of space for our global community. It's kind of our space to come together to share and create, but we are actually just working on a website. So that's going to be really getting some of those stories out there of all the amazing women that are doing different things and their authentic career journeys. So that's on the horizon for 2021.
Amazing. And so I've said here, in your capacity with Saltmarsh, you can be found educating us on how to market ourselves on TikTok. That was one of my favourites of yours. I like that a lot. Like, Joy, you need to let that up. We need to be doing a bit more TikTok, and my kids will never forgive me, but we're going to do it anyway. And also I said you shared, and we're going to come on to talk about this, which you shared recently some beautiful videos of your daughter who has, I call it extra needs, special needs, Marigold. And we're going to come on to talk a little bit about that as well, about within the conversation about the support that women need and people need. We're going to talk a little bit about parents with children with extra needs. And we found out in the course of this conversation with Joy that Joy's son Sam also has extra needs, special needs, which is, so we've been having some lovely exchanges on email in advance.
It's wonderful.
And Sam works in the sector.
Yes, he most certainly does. He's a technical writer and has been for 10 years.
Amazing. Right, so less of me talking. So you really are two of the best connected people in the sector. In your conversations with, we're going to talk about women first, and then we're going to come on to talk about mental health. So what are you hearing? I mean, this is going to be an experiential conversation really with us, you know, sharing what we're hearing. So what are you hearing from the women you know about, and you know, from what they're hearing about how COVID is impacting women's careers? Either of you, I can direct this to either of you, whoever wants to jump in first.
I mean, I'm going to start with the silver lining, because there's some tough stuff too.
Yeah.
But there's been much more of a sense in the industry that it's okay to have a family life. That is, men, women, couples, single parents, whatever it is. Everyone is coping with something. They're coping with aging parents. They're coping with educating children. They're coping with not being able to pursue their passions. They can't sing in the church choir. They're not going to scouting or you know, many of the things that make them human. And so there's this tremendous outpouring of empathy, I think, and everyone is appreciating a little bit more. My phrase is everybody has a story. Everybody has a story. So I think there's that appreciation that everybody has a story that's come out of it, that in some ways has taken pressure off of women, in terms of the fact that it's okay to say, oh, I have kids, you know, I'm not supposed to hide them somewhere in order to have my career. But I think that is very much more so for, I would say, professional women. I hate to use that word because it sounds like other women are professional, but I mean, women who are in the professions or who are knowledge workers. The other side of it is very, very different. And I know we were talking about that on email this morning. Yeah, Helen?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's like, I don't know what it's like in the US, actually. I'm interested to know what it's like in the US, because when we went into lockdown in March, I mean, every professional woman I know went into a tailspin, because so many women who are, you know, most of my friends are, you know, working and their husbands are working as well. And everyone suddenly pivoted online and was working full time whilst trying to homeschool, a lot of them, young children. And what seemed to be happening was women were taking the lead as primary carer and primary educator, as well as sort of managing their careers as well. So the kind of stories I heard March, April, May, June, July, the dark months, the very dark months, were women just saying, I cannot juggle this. This is so intense. You know, the pressure is so intense, and I can't be all these things to all, you know, all people. I find that now the kids are back at school in the UK, actually, there seems to be more equality. And I think a lot of people who now are both at home, and I know, speaking from personal experience, there's much more share of domestic work because my husband is at home more. So we're getting more equality at home, and in that respect, it's easier. But I think that's because the schools are back here in the UK and we've got that coverage. And I don't know whether they're all back in the US, Joy.
No, they're absolutely not. They're absolutely not. And in fact, I live in the suburbs of Chicago, and the city of Chicago is going down into stay-at-home order effective Monday.
Yeah, oh gosh, really?
Because we've had a big increase in cases. Now, it's very different state to state here. But then, speaking as, you know, both of us having this perspective of having children with special needs, you know, not only is school a place where they can get extra attention during the day, they get skilled attention. I mean, I think that's part of the other thing that people are faced with that are educating children. My children are all grown and gone, but I remember this time very intensely, is that I hear people saying, I don't know how to do calculus. I'm trying to help my kid. I'm not good at math. I don't, you know, I don't know French, you know, I can't help with these things. But when it comes to special needs kids, speech therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy, these are not skills that many of us have. And I know that when my son was going through occupational therapy, I got a lot of coaching from the occupational therapist so I could help him at home. But that's not the same as being the occupational therapist. So I think that extra pressure is really, really challenging for people who just aren't prepared to be teachers. That's why we have professional teachers.
That's the video that you shared, Helen, that I think really resonated with me. You shared this most beautiful video of you singing with Marigold, and
it was like that all the time.
Yeah, and I think what was amazing about that was the insight into, you know, I think that for the parents, I think you're right that now children must make a big difference whether children are at home or able to be at school. And I think your video showed the extra pressures on people, probably also with very young children and children with special needs, that how on earth are you supposed to get on, with life? Actually, it must have been completely impossible.
Yeah, I mean, we did, all her support is centered at school, and like Joy said, that's where the therapists go, that's where she gets her, all her development, her education, and that just stopped overnight. And not only that, we just got letters saying, well, all the therapists are now on COVID wards, so you have nothing. And I think, what for me as the parent of a vulnerable child, it made me feel horribly exposed and very, very vulnerable myself. And obviously there was that extra level of care and attention and routine that a child with special needs needs. You can't say to a child with special needs, Mummy's going to go on a video con now, can you just not come in? And she doesn't understand that. So it was exceptionally, it's been such an exceptionally hard time, and still is such an exceptionally hard time for the disability community. And so many were forgotten in lockdown. I think we just have to make sure that doesn't happen again to that community and to the many people who are caring for people in that community.
Yeah, absolutely. Are you hearing in terms of so obviously I guess there's the please let them stay at school in the UK. I mean, in the US, I hear from friends whose children are at home, and I'm not really sure what the solution is. We're going to try and come up with some positive stories and solutions. When the children are at home, if you've got young children with special needs, I guess the reality is that it's about trying to co-parent as much as possible. But Joy, you had a really interesting observation about one of the underlying issues, about why COVID is, and we've got some stats. So McKinsey's done an interesting survey talking about the impact is much heavier on women. I think so. It says 39%. Women make up 39% of the workforce, but 54% of the redundancies. And you said it, but your point was that it's in terms of who's sort of suffering most, it's because of the pay gap. Is that right, Joy? You were saying,
yeah, absolutely. Because if you're really having issues with childcare, and there's another piece here around private schooling that I want to connect.
Oh gosh, I've just written it, Joy. I've just written it.
Because it's a wealth, it's a wealth issue as well, right?
Yeah.
So when women only make 70 cents on the dollar, and you have a dual income family, and you have to have one person stay at home, which is, I mean, you're at home anyway, but taking over primary, kind of stepping away from their career, the economic reality is the person that has the better salary and the better health insurance, because remember, in the US, our health insurance is based with our employer. What decision do you have? There's not a decision. You have to go with the person who's going to bring in the more money. And when men in general make more, that makes it a very difficult decision. Now, what's happening in a lot of places in the US where the public schools are not open, private schools in many cases are, not always, but in some cases are. So then people that have means can pay to send their children to private school. That's not accessible to people who don't have those kinds of means. So the people who are already being disproportionately impacted, which are lower income people in the service sector, minimum wage type jobs, women, people of color, then don't have these additional outlets, and it is very challenging.
Helen,
yeah, exactly. It was one of the things I'd just written as we were talking is, the difference between here in the UK between state schools and how they were able to support kids whilst homeschooling, and children at independent schools who just pivoted online seamlessly overnight and went straight into digital classrooms. And a lot of people I were talking with, you just see their kids in the background, working away. My neighbour's kid was having, digital classrooms from 9 a.m. to 4. So they had that coverage of being able to do work, whereas the state schools are trying to deal with so many issues, from digital poverty and children that can't get online to children who are under social care. So what they could do for children was so much less, and there was just such a difference of experience between parents with their children at state school and those who were at independent school.
Yeah, internet deserts is a huge issue in the United States. In the city of Chicago, one of the things that they did to also keep the bus drivers working is they equipped school buses with hotspots.
Oh, really?
And the drivers drove around the impoverished neighborhoods and parked in the impoverished neighborhoods with hotspots so that people who were in internet deserts could connect. And actually, someone who used to work for ILTA, some of you may know a guy named Casey Baxley, who used to be on my team. Casey now works for an organization called Connected Chicago, whose mission is to deal with these internet deserts so that there's more equality in access to education.
That's awesome.
And it also can impact access to justice, access to all kinds of things which are internet based. And it's a
100%.
fantastic organization but this is a real problem.
That's so cool. I think so in that so in that McKinsey, I'd encourage anyone interested in this topic to look at the McKinsey Lean In survey. But in terms of solutions they suggested, so they said how companies can address the core challenges. This is specific to women before we move on to mental health. So employers need to check whether productivity and performance expectations set before COVID are realistic, help create work-life boundaries, establish set hours for meetings, because I think one of the issues that we face as well, and this will filter into our conversation about mental health, is that kind of like, when does work start and stop, and the whole thing just blurs into one, doesn't it? And then they should raise awareness in the workplace about unconscious bias, such as challenging assumptions that a child playing in the background means less commitment to work. I actually agree with you here, Joy. I think that there's been much more understanding, and I feel like my children have barged in many times, and people don't bat an eyelid anymore. So I feel like that's a progress, as you said. And then employees need to be aware of the full range of benefits to them, such as mental health counselling, which we're going to come on to talk about, because obviously there's a big overlap. And companies should share regular updates on the state of the business and key decisions that affect employees' work and lives. And then with Black women, because of this survey showed very clearly that Black and ethnic minority women are more disadvantaged. So make an explicit commitment to advancing and supporting Black women and communicate it to employees along with a clear explanation. There's lots that can be done. I mean, are you seeing, do you think it's a case of, are you seeing anything that's been particularly effective that's helped you, or anything that we can share before we move on to talk about mental health?
One of the things for me, and because my organization was basically remote to begin with, we had very small hoteling office, people weren't in there every day. But we basically said to people, I don't care if you work 9 to 5. So if you get up in the morning and work from 6 to 8 and educate your children from 8 to 10 and then go back to work, get your work done. Just get your work done. And if you have your baby on your lap, we had a virtual event last week where one of my team, went on camera and her 1-year-old was with her and everyone loved it. It was fantastic. As long as people are producing, I think there's an opportunity here to be more flexible, and I'm glad that I can provide that flexibility in my organization. But one more comment on this, and then I know you're going to turn more to mental health, but this is also an opportunity for women leaders to shine, and I don't want to miss that. So some of you know who I think is one of the most brilliant women in our industry, Karen Levy at Debevoise. She's the CIO at Debevoise. Absolutely wicked smart, fantastic leader. Love her. She and I have this kind of ongoing conversation about superpowers versus super skills. And I'm a big fan of the idea of super skills. You can learn stuff. But she talks about women's superpowers in emotional intelligence. So right now, empathy may be the single most important trait that any leader can have. And this is a superpower for women. This is a time that women leaders can exercise that empathy muscle and really make an impact in their organizations. And I would urge leaders that are listening to this to use that empathy and bring that to the forefront as you manage through this period.
I love that. Helen, do you have anything to add to that before we that's going to be so relevant in the conversation about mental health. And as you know, I wrote a piece about this, and empathy for me is, and I love the fact that you're linking that, because you're right, then women typically, that's something that we excel at. So Helen, did you have anything else to observe before we sort of shift to mental health? That kind of quite neatly segues. But
no, I don't want to take away that seamless link. What Joy said, really.
I should have made it look like we planned it that way.
I think you're so right, Joy, and I do a lot of what I do is a lot of personal branding and social media coaching. It's something I always say to founders. It's like, be vulnerable, be open in how vulnerable you are, because there is such huge power in vulnerability, and that's what will connect you emotionally to people at this time. And right now, that's what people need. People need that emotional connection.
Yeah. I mean, so I'm very please not to turn into me. So I feel that on the mental health, one of the reasons for wanting to talk about that, and I'm pleased that you raised empathy, Joy. So I was concerned about speaking to people in the industry, and the morale seems to be extremely low. And I wrote a piece recently saying that everybody I speak to, a lot of the people I speak to, it feels like they've had the stuffing knocked out of them.
Yeah.
And I feel like we need to. So there's previously been two things. One that previously been like this sort of stigma, which I'm not sure does it exist anymore. It's just, if it does, we need to just talk about it all the time, just smash it down so that it becomes normalized to talk about mental health. But the other thing that concerns me is that I don't want people to be just talking about mental health anymore. The point of my article was saying, do you know what, the time for giving yourself a gold star for jumping on the mental health bandwagon has long gone, right? We need to be making meaningful changes and actually query, do we need to actually overhaul the whole culture of law firms and legal organizations to put empathy at the very core, so that we're really not just making token gestures about, we care about mental health. We're actually really putting empathy at the very center of because I think that COVID has introduced the way that people are working. There's lots of stats that we could refer to, we probably won't have time. It's clearly having a big impact. What are you hearing and seeing?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I mean, definitely, I feel at this point in the year very, very flat. And I think anyone that comes out of 2020 with their mental well-being intact is a hero, because people have been through so much and it's been so polarizing, from people like who've been dealing with young children whilst trying to work, to people who've just been on their own for months with no social interaction. It's been incredibly polarizing, and I think we are going to enter now into an even more traumatic period of people who, I know someone who has been furloughed since March and will continue to be on furlough till March. And she said, I should be loving this, but I'm not, because the choice has been taken away from me. I want to work now, and I don't have that choice. So we've got people who are on extended furlough in the UK. We've got people who are under threat of redundancy, small business owners who are struggling to survive. So the pressure, and leaders, making such difficult decisions every single day. The pressures are remarkable, and I think there has to be, a massive cultural change. I'm very interested in the work the Mindful Business Charter has been doing here in the UK. So that's an initiative, Joy, by that leading law firms and financial services have signed up to drive cultural and behavioural change, because that's what's needed. We can't play around the edges right now, I don't think.
Yeah, that's a great point. And mental health had begun to get more attention last year in the US. There was a very much shared article called Big Law Killed My Husband.
Oh, yes, I read that.
Yes, that was awful.
So substance abuse became the source of quite a bit of attention. There was an ABA challenge, American Bar Association challenge, around substance abuse, focusing on alcohol, but also on other types of substances. So there were some attention being paid to mental health, particularly at the lawyer ranks. I think that needs to be extended through the staff, who are also feeling very stressed. And Helen, I'm with you. Anyone who says that they are not feeling extra emotional stress is either lying or in denial. There's there's nothing in between, because it's just so extraordinary. Yeah. And it has to be able to be spoken about. It can't be stigmatized. We have to be okay with it. And then I'm going to apologize. And
I know I must let you go.
But I do have a prop I need to show before I go, because Caroline knows I'm a serial hugger, and I want you to know that serial huggers are really struggling right now.
Joy, I thought about this. I thought about you, honest to God, I thought about you and your hugs, and
once we are able to be together again, Michelle Gossmeyer gave this to me from Denton, I'm going to carry this around with me so that I know that people are ready to be hugged, and I'll just hold it like this as I walk.
Joy, you don't need to remember. You just barrel up to people and just give them a hug. We know this, right? There's not going to be any bell ringing. You see Joy in the next thing.
Well, Joy, I look forward to that day when we meet and can hug.
So everyone everyone listening in, you've got Helen and I for another 5 minutes, but Joy, and it's so great to chat to you.
Oh, it's wonderful.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody. Be well. And for everyone in the US, happy Thanksgiving. With all that 2020 brought us, we have an awful lot to be thankful for, and certainly for our community and for friends like you.
Thank you, Joy. And
Helen,
don't go.
I'm here.
Thank you, Joy. We'll speak to you soon.
Oh, joy is a joy. How wonderful.
It's a joy. So do you think, so just carrying on, so we've only got a few more minutes, but so do you think, it's interesting that you talk about the charter actually, because, I wonder, I think it's what's great about the UK mental health charter is that the fact that people are, it's almost significant in itself in that big firms and financial institutions are joining and talking about mental health. I still have concerns about the fact that whether it's meaningful, because I think that joining a charter is one thing. I'm not saying that they're not achieving anything, but I think that the query is, and in the article that I wrote, I talked about Apple. I think that there's one thing sort of joining a charter, but it's another sort of really making the time to look at your culture and whether how you're treating staff. And I think that the risk is that with everything else going on, that it could be quite low down the list of priorities. But actually, if you look at Apple's success, actually I think empathy has been quite central to their success. And I think this perception that empathy is this soft touch, and that actually you need to focus on the hard stuff is completely false.
It is, and I think we do, we've made such progress in legal, but we do have some legacy behaviours. And, it's like you said, there's one thing kind of signing up to a charter, but it's how does that translate in the day-to-day interactions we have with each other in the industry? And there is so much more room for kindness and empathy and listening and all those very soft skills that actually haven't been valued in the past, I don't think, in our industry, but really, really make the difference. I think we are making huge progress, and I do see a lot of big initiatives, but yes, that those have to play out right now on all those sort of, daily interactions we're having. It's such a hard time. And I think what we keep coming back to, we keep talking about it as She Breaks the Law, is we're missing it out on so many of those like water cooler moments where you just, you just go and have a coffee and you connect with someone and you have a chat, and that creates a very special kind of energy and it's, helps you cope. And we've kind of lost all that, and we've just gone into these days of back-to-back of Zoom calls.
And I think, but do you think the point of that structure, I don't know, do you talk about this with your members? So I think that as well as there being an onus, an onus, is that the right word? On employee.
Caroline.
It's Friday. As well as there being an onus on employers to reach out to employees and help them, I think perhaps we also need to take steps, at this point about the day. Joy made an interesting observation about working as and when you can. That's a very good point for people with children, but I think perhaps we also have to create boundaries in terms of shutting the office door, right, going right to diarising and then saying, right, I'm going to work from here to there, and then I'm going, and I know it's hard and it's easier said than done. And also I've heard someone said to me recently that they try to create, so they go out of the house, they go for a 20-minute walk in the morning, and then they come back as if they've
been for a commute.
As if they've been, as if they create a commute for themselves. Right? So they go out, they drive off, or they walk. In this case, they walk. It's probably better for you. And then they come back to the office, and it's about creating, I guess, distinctions, for yourself.
Yeah, no, and I think we all need help with that. And I think actually, I know a lot of women that are very bad at creating those boundaries in the best of those times, and I'm awful at it. And I think kind of that is one way companies can support people, is by really helping enforce those, boundaries of when work starts, when work should finish, making people, feel like they can take those breaks. I do hear some companies doing good things of saying, there was one the other day on LinkedIn, like everyone has a mindfulness hour. And they say no technology, you just go and you do whatever, you have a walk, you read a book. But, my husband's company, in the peak of lockdown, they had a 2-hour slot in the day where there were no calls, and that was just thinking time.
Yeah.
And that was great. Unfortunately, it hasn't carried through, because that's, you know, a big part of the business day to take away. But when it was really at peak crisis, it really did help. So,
Yes.
you know, I do see some, you know, examples of people doing great things, and we just need to sustain that now for the long term, because we're going to be working like this, you know, well into 2021.
We were getting really positive. Let's not finish
I
it on a low.
There is some positive stuff, you know.
This is a marked improvement on our original idea of crying for half an hour, wasn't it? And
I do.
I think we've done really well. We've kept.
Listen, I think there is still a place for the cry format.
The next session we do, we're just going to cry for half an hour with a drink. Listen, I've got to cut off because we're at time. But it's been a real pleasure. I'm really grateful to you and Joy, who's now had to go. But thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks, Caroline. Have a lovely weekend.
Thank you. Bye.